Welcome in, everyone. Ready to dive into the February 2024 OCQ.
Let's do it. Always love seeing what this magazine puts out.
It's not your average business magazine, that's for sure. But that's why we're here, right? To unpack it all. Especially for our listeners in the Netherlands, this is like a cheat sheet for what's trending in the business world.
You said it. And this month's issue, well, it's a good one. It's got that perfect blend of practical advice, the stuff you can actually use, and then, boom, those big picture think pieces that get you really thinking.
Right. And speaking of big picture, can we talk about this cover for a second? Vivid colors, that intense dragon. It definitely grabs your attention.
Very intentional, I'm sure. I mean, the dragon, especially in Chinese culture, it's all about strength, luck, a good dose of wisdom, all pretty fitting themes for the year of the dragon, don't you think?
Totally. OCQ seems to be playing on that, using those visuals to get people fired up for boldness and innovation. Kind of like Peter R. Klink, the editor, he says in his foreword, "May this year of the dragon bestow you with strength, independence, and adventure."
He really nailed it with that one. It speaks right to that entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
that drive to take on new challenges head on.
Totally. But okay, let's get down to brass tacks. One thing OCQ always does well is diving into those nitty-gritty legal updates, and this issue is no different. Big changes coming in 2024 for the Netherlands, stuff that could impact pretty much everyone, especially anyone in business.
It's true. And these updates, they're not just random rule changes, They really reflect some bigger shifts happening in society. Take the almgiving sweat, for example.
Well, what now?
Oh, right, sorry. It's Dutch. Basically, it means Environment Act, and it's finally being rolled out after, well, a pretty bumpy road to get here.
I've heard whispers about this one. What's the quick rundown for those of us who haven't had time to really dig into it?
In a nutshell, it aims to make the whole building and development process way smoother, less bureaucratic. The idea is to shift towards more self-regulation.
So, less red tape. Sounds like it could be a good thing, right?
Theoretically, yes. Quicker approvals for construction projects, that kind of thing. But of course, the big question is whether it'll actually work that way in practice. Still early days.
Makes sense. So potentially a big win for developers, but maybe some uncertainty still up in the air about how it'll actually all play out. And it's not just construction and development, right? There were some legal updates addressing the housing situation as well.
Absolutely. OCQ covers some new housing regulations. And let me tell you, these are designed to tackle the big one, the affordability crisis, and hopefully make it easier to attract key workers.
I can see why that's a priority.
It's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
Imagine trying to find skilled employees when they can't even afford to live anywhere near your business.
Yeah.
These regulations are meant to address that very issue.
Talk about a hot button issue, right? It'll be really interesting to see how these regulations end up impacting the market over the next few months. But OCQ, they didn't just stick to the real world. They went digital too, right?
Well, these days, it's all connected. The magazine, it highlights this move to criminalize doxing, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big step towards making the online world safer, more private.
Especially these days, with so much information just a click away. Makes you think about the responsibility that comes with that.
Absolutely. Protecting yourself, your business from online harassment, it's essential.
For sure. And speaking of responsibility, this is where OCQ takes a bit of an unexpected turn. They've got this whole article on self-compassion. Not exactly what I'd expect to find in a business magazine.
I know, right? But it's actually really relevant when you think about it. I mean, in a way, it's like a different kind of responsibility, right?
Right.
Taking care of yourself, especially in the fast-paced business world. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget that. Keiki Kemp, the author, she makes a strong case for self-compassion being crucial for everyone. Not just for, people dealing with chronic pain or whatever, but for everyone.
Interesting. So what's the gist? How does she frame this whole self-compassion thing?
Well, she starts by breaking it down into three main parts: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Unpack those a bit for me.
Sure. So self-kindness, it's pretty much what it sounds like, right? Treating yourself with the same kind of understanding and compassion you offer a friend. We're often way harder on ourselves than we would ever be on someone else. Then there's common humanity. This one's huge, especially in the business world, where it's easy to feel like you're alone in your struggles. Common humanity is that reminder that everyone faces challenges. You're not the only one who makes mistakes, who feels insecure sometimes. We're all in this together, kind of thing.
Right. Don't compare your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel.
Exactly. And finally, you've got mindfulness. This one's all about, paying attention to your thoughts and feelings, even the negative ones, but without judgment. just noticing them without getting swept away by them.
So it's about creating that space to acknowledge how you feel without letting those feelings, especially the negative ones, completely derail you. Sounds like a useful skill, though, I'll admit. Easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. It takes practice.
Oh.
But the good news is, Kiki, she actually offers some practical techniques, things like meditation and journaling, you can use to cultivate self-compassion.
I can see how those would be helpful, not just for dealing with stress, but even for gaining clarity and perspective in a work setting.
Absolutely. And that ties back to this whole idea of responsibility that we were talking about. Taking care of your mental well-being, it's not just a personal thing. It directly impacts your ability to make good business decisions, to show up as your best self.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of business decisions, let's shift gears to the financial side of things. OCQ always has some solid advice for entrepreneurs, and with tax season coming up, this issue's got some really timely tips.
Oh, yeah. Ghislaine Capella's article on taxes, it's a must-read, especially for entrepreneurs. She does a great job breaking down some of those trickier concepts, like VAT categories. But what I really appreciate is her emphasis on financial literacy as a whole.
It's so important, right?
It really is. It's not just about, knowing how to fill out the forms. It's about truly understanding your financial obligations, being able to make informed choices for your business. She even touches on the profit-first methodology, which I think is super interesting.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Refresh my memory, though. What's that all about?
So profit-first, it's basically a different way of approaching financial management. Instead of the traditional sales expenses profit model, it flips the script. Sales profit expenses.
So you're prioritizing profit from the get-go, making it non-negotiable. I like it.
Right. It's like tricking yourself into profitability. Instead of hoping there's something left over at the end, you're allocating that profit share up front, and then you have to work with what remains for expenses.
That's a really interesting concept. Forces you to be more mindful of those expenses right from the start. I love it. But, okay, before we get too bogged down in numbers and finances, we've got to talk about some of the other, the fun stuff in this issue. They've got a whole piece on the second home brewers.
Ah, yes. For anyone dreaming of escaping to their own international haven.
Exactly. For those who aren't familiar, what exactly is a beurs?
Right, good point. So beurs is Dutch for expo or fair. So the second home brewers, it's a huge international real estate expo, happens every year here in the Netherlands. Basically, it's a chance to check out properties from all over the world, maybe even find that perfect vacation home you've been picturing.
A little escape for when you need a break from the entrepreneurial hustle, right?
Exactly. And hey, speaking of escapes, but maybe a bit more high speed, the magazine also gives us a peek at the Alfa Romeo Milano EV.
Oh, yeah, that was sleek.
Talk about style and sustainability combined. That's a glimpse into the future of transportation, for sure.
It's wild to think about. From international real estate to all-electric sports cars, this issue really does cover a lot of ground.
It does. And, I think what ties it all together, this underlying theme that runs through so much of it, is this idea of change and adaptation.
100%.
Which, let's face it, that's the name of the game in the business world, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And speaking of change and adaptation, there's one more element we haven't even touched on yet, and that's the role of artificial intelligence. AI is kind of woven throughout this whole issue, sometimes subtly, sometimes not so much. It really is everywhere you look these days, isn't it?
It's incredible. And this magazine, they're not shying away from it at all.
If anything, they're embracing it. I mean, you've got the AI-generated cover art, right?
Yeah.
And then in those vignettes at the end, it's like they're pulling back the curtain, showing you exactly how much AI was used in each piece.
It's transparency, which I appreciate.
Right.
And it's not just about, look what AI can do. It's deeper than that. This issue makes you think about the bigger picture, AI's role in creativity, how it's changing the business landscape, even how we define work itself.
It's a lot to process. On the one hand, you've got AI creating art, writing articles, even playing a role in designing things like that Alfa Romeo we were talking about. It makes you wonder, where does that leave human creativity?
That's the question, isn't it? And what I like about OCQ is they're not pretending to have all the answers. They're not saying, here's the AI rulebook, follow it. They're doing what good magazines should do, sparking dialogue, getting people to think critically about these things.
It's like they're saying, hey, this technology's here, it's evolving fast, so let's figure it out together.
It's exactly. Let's explore its potential, understand the challenges, and figure out how to navigate this new landscape.
And that, I think, is what makes OCQ such a valuable resource, especially for entrepreneurs, for anyone who wants to stay ahead of the curve. It's about more than just keeping up. It's about understanding those bigger forces shaping the future.
Couldn't agree more. And this issue, it's a perfect example of that. It's engaging, it's thought-provoking, it's OCQ at its best.
It really is. So, to everyone listening, if you're looking for insights into the trends shaping the future of business, do yourself a favor, check out the February 2024 issue of OCQ. You won't regret it.
You heard it here first.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.